Okay, we'll go ahead and I'm going to call to order the Chandler Unified School District Governing Board meeting for Wednesday, June 10th, 2020. We just completed our study session concerning our reopening plan for the fall, and now we will head on to our roll call. Mrs. Nye.
Barb Mosden.
Here.
Laura Bruner.
Here.
David Evans.
Here.
Lindsay Love.
Here.
Karen McGee.
Here.
Thank you, Mrs. Nye. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you also join me in a moment of silence as we reflect upon our recent events in this country and how we can best serve our students in the Chandler Unified School District. Thank you. We have some routine business for this evening. Our first is to approve our minutes of our May 6th, 2020 regular board meeting and our May 12th, 2020 special board meeting. I have not heard that there are any additions or corrections to the minutes, so could I please get a motion to approve the minutes of those two meetings?
Madam President, this is Lindsay, and I make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 6, 2020 regular board meeting and the May 12, 2020 special board meeting as presented.
Dave Evans, I second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes of May 6th, 2020 and May 12th, 2020, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Our next item is to approve payroll for May 7th, May 21st, May 29th, and June 4th, 2020, and the current expenditures. Could I please get a motion for that approval?
Madam President, this is Dave Evans. I move that we approve payroll for May 7th, 21st, 29th, and June 4th, 2020, and current expenditures.
This is Lindsay, and I second.
All those in favor of approving our payroll for the dates mentioned and the current expenditures, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Castile, is there correspondence?
None this evening, Madam President.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda, and that will be presented by Dr. Castile. Dr. Castile?
Madam President, members of the board, we have our out-of-state student travel pre-planning request. As Dr. Gilbert indicated, in the reopening plans, all these will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, but we did want to allow the students to do some pre-planning. Monetary gifts, request approval for monetary gifts that have been donated to our schools totaling $95,171.43. We've had items donated to our schools totaling $1,740.83. We have a resolution to sign vouchers between board meetings. This allows us to stamp vouchers with your names, between board meetings, as long as the voucher is ratified by the board at the next regularly scheduled meeting. This attachment covers July 1 through June 30th, and this just helps us expedite business in the district, and it's a standard request each year. We're requesting approval to participate in the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program, Summer Food Service Program, and at-risk after-school meals component of the Child and Adult Care Food Programs for the 2021 year. Permanent agreement is in a renewal and doesn't require any signatures this year. The Nutrition Department contract renewal of Food Service Management Company was awarded as a 1-year with renewable options. Based on past performance, pricing, service, and quality of product and services, we're recommending renewal of the following contract for the 2021 in the amount of $7,463,906 to Aramark. Per Arizona Revised Statute ARS 15905G and Governing Board Policy DBJ, the Governing Board may authorize the expenditure of monies budgeted within the maintenance and operations section of the budget for any subsection within the section in excess of the amount specified in the adopted budget only by action taken in a public meeting. And if the expenditures for all subsections of this section do not exceed the amount budgeted as provided in this section. So that's all in quotes, and you can tell that it's a lot of legalese. We recommend authorization to exceed fund subsections within the maintenance and operations budget. Procurement of technology items, we're requesting approval of the annual authorization of technology items in the amount of $6 million. This amount requested is based on previous year's expenditures. The items are, but not limited to, laptops, carts, network hardware, cameras, computers, projectors, and document cameras. The technology item is listed for your review. As we've done in the past, a quarterly expenditure report is provided. Once again, this helps us facilitate our schools acquiring this information, acquiring these devices by having your prior authorization to expend a not to exceed amount. We have revised the quarterly report, and we'll have that for you coming soon so that you can review and give us additional input. In conjunction with governing board policy and pursuant to Arizona Administrative Code, the governing board may delegate to a designee certain authorities. We're requesting approval of the attached delegation of authority so the board does not have to act on mundane and routine decisions. This delegation is presented for approval on an annual basis. Maintenance and service contracts for the 2020-21 school year. Recommend approval of these contracts for various software and hardware used by the district departments, and the estimated amount is $7,081,187. We have a maintenance, a memorandum of understanding with the Grand Canyon University for performance-based learning project at Anderson Junior High. The program will provide extended learning opportunities for student, faculty, and parents at Anderson Junior High, and we're recommending approval. It has been there, I believe this will be year 3, if I'm not mistaken. We do stock items at our warehouse to, again, facilitate our staff acquiring those items, and we typically know what we need in volume. This is support services. It was solicited on public purchase. We have received 21 responses. Bids were solicited from suppliers to provide pricing for items stocked. The recap is listed below. We have the ability to award by line item or group, whichever is more advantageous to the district. So certain items have been awarded to the overall low vendor to ensure uniformity in style, color, and delivery. You can see below we are asking for approval to award warehouse stock in the amount of $220,000. I'm sorry, $867. Am I reading this right?
Oh, 220.
A total of $220,867.62. I'm not used to those 4 digits. I apologize. These are for such things as ceiling tile, electrical supplies, locks, paint, plumbing, safety items, and these will be items stocked in our warehouse. Extended contracts and sole source. We recommend the governing board approve the attached list of district contracts, state-approved contracts, Mojave Cooperative, Omnia Partners Cooperative, One GPA Cooperative, GPPCS contracts, and SAVE contracts that the district anticipates using throughout next school year. The sole source provider list is also provided. An estimated dollar amount has been provided for each vendor based on 2019-20. Maricopa County garnishment resolution. In order to continue having Maricopa County process our garnishments, an updated resolution with current board member signatures must be submitted annually. We're recommending approval of our Journey 2025 employee one-time payment of $600 for full-time, $300 for part-time employees based on our metrics reaching their goal. And human resources, employment, separation, compensation, job descriptions, and contract templates. Recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Castile. Could I please get a motion for approval of our consent agenda?
Madam President, this is Lindsay, and I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
This is Karen, and I'll second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
This is Dave Evans. I'm going to say present, and I can tell you why if you'd like to hear. And I'd actually like to tell you a couple.
Okay. If you would like to tell us, thank you.
I'm sorry, but with the reported number of cases in Arizona, we actually lead something right now. We're actually #1 in the country in one respect, and that's being facetious. We have a very high number of spiking cases. So I'm not comfortable with students traveling out of state right now, especially girls wrestling. So obviously a lot of contact there. The second issue is number 4.13 extended contracts. It seems to me that there are missing contracts, and I'm happy to speak offline with either Mrs. Berry or whomever would be responsible for those. Let me just point out a couple of vendors who we do extensive work with, and they charge us significantly, but I don't see them, and maybe I'm just not aware of them. So our banking, we pay fees for banking, and I don't see that contract anywhere in SoulSource or in the other contracts. And then, I mean, Google, Microsoft, we are probably going to be doing a lot more work with them. Maybe I'm wrong, they are not there. So I'd like to talk offline about that. So my vote will be present for right now.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. So Mrs. Nye, please record that we had 4 ayes and 1 present. We will, and David, I appreciate you explaining your rationale. So thank you. Our next item is an action item, and presenting tonight is Mr. Fletcher, and it is on a technology filter. Mr. Fletcher.
Madam President, members of the board, with the district moving toward take-home technology, the district needs to purchase a more robust filter to work with the firewall. District staff evaluated multiple products and determined that Lightspeed Relay for all operating systems with 55,000 licenses is the best for the district. The product will be purchased from public sector through Omnia Partners IT Purchasing Cooperative, which complies with all school procurement rules. The 1-year contract for this product is $206,308.65. We recommend your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Could I please get a motion for this item from a board member?
Madam President, this is Dave Evans. I move that we approve Insight Public Sector to provide the Lightspeed filter in the amount of $206,308.65.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Karen, and I'll second.
Okay, Mrs. McGee seconded. So are there any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes, Mrs. McGee.
Thank you. Mr. Fletcher, this is a 1-year contract, and I'm assuming that we're going to need to renew it every year. I mean, we're going to want to provide that same firewall protection as we go forward, correct?
That is correct.
Would be any advantage to getting a multi-year contract at this point? Or
we looked at the multi-year contract. We didn't think the payoff was significant enough. Plus, we want a year under our belt, and then we can go back and negotiate a multi-year contract if we believe this is the product to take us into the future. but we'd like at least an opportunity to work with it first before we committed to more time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fletcher, could you please explain what the filter is going to do and why we also have the firewall? And could you, I guess, explain what it's going to do for our students?
So any device that's taken home, especially by students, we are still responsible for that device, and the district is still responsible to make sure that we comply with all SIPA, COPA, et cetera, regulations. SIPA is the Children's Internet Protection Act. COPA is the Children's Online Protection Act. What this filter does is we load basically a small client on any device that's going to leave the district. Anytime you go to log on to any wireless network, you will be directed to our filter regardless of the wireless network you are running on. So if you're at home and you log on to your home network and you go to hit the internet, it's going to direct you to our filter. Therefore, we are complying with all the acronyms, if you will, for technology regarding children's safety. That's the biggest feature, Mrs. Moslin.
Thank you very much. I think that many people don't really understand how many different components there are in our technology to keep children safe and keep our network safe. So are there any other questions from board members? Mr. Evans?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Fletcher, a few years ago, we used a different, I guess it's called a filter. We used some sort of software that pretty much limited what you could do when you were in our buildings and our sites. I know that for a few years, I did not use a real cell phone. I only had Wi-Fi access. And with that Wi-Fi access and with my computer when I brought it to the district, I couldn't even access basic Google to do a search. We're using Google Classrooms. What will be filtered out? Is this the same thing? What will be restricted? Because that creates a huge barrier for students and staff who are if they need to work at home on our devices.
Well, Mr. Evans, I will say that we've used Google Classroom all in the fourth quarter, and we did not experience any issues with that I'm aware of. I'm sure we had some come up and down, but this really isn't the firewall. This is a filter that directs you to the firewall. So again, if you go to log on a network other than ours with a district device, it's going to route you to the filter and the firewall. So this filter sits on top of our firewall. It's just a more robust filter than what we currently have. So I'm not sure what specific issues you were having previously, but I'm not aware that we are having any issues with Google or Google Classroom at this point in time. And if there are issues, I'd like to know about it, because we can't solve it if we don't know about it.
Okay, one of the biggest issues was with the old system, and this is a couple years ago, so we probably don't need to get into it here, but you had to allow your device to go on, pick up a piece of software that would prevent your device from then putting other things onto the district network. And that's incredibly important for our security, but at the same time, that was a couple-minute process, very often didn't work, and then you were, in a case of a student, not capable of doing your homework. So this won't be like that.
I really am not familiar or remember what you're talking about, but based on what the IT staff is telling me, this is the filter that will allow us to have students and staff take devices home. So I'd have to sit down with you and get more information to really understand. 2 years ago in our lifetime is a very long time, even though short, if you will, in reality. So I'm really not familiar. Yes, we did have a client that you used to have to load because your device was not authorized to be on the network, and it would go through and make sure that your system was up to speed and didn't have any viruses, if I remember the device you're talking about correctly, so that you would not be allowed to hit our network if you had a virus.
Right. Yeah.
But these are district issued devices, so we shouldn't see a virus issue. Now, there could potentially be an issue if a student downloads something at their house, it gets infected, but hopefully our network security will catch that as that device tries to log on to the network.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Evans. Mrs. McGee, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay. Ms. Love?
I don't have any questions right now, no.
Okay, and Mrs. Bruner? Okay, so we'll go ahead and vote on this. All those in favor of purchasing the technology filter from Omnia Partners IT Purchasing Cooperative, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. The motion carries. Our next portion of the meeting is our information items, and our first one will be from Mrs. Berry. It's our student activity, auxiliary operations, and tax credit reporting.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board. Tonight, the student activities, auxiliary, and tax credit reports for the months ending July of 2019 through May of 2020 are provided for your review. Do you have any questions?
I don't. Do any board members have any questions? Okay. The next one is also yours, Mrs. Berry, our comprehensive audited financials for 2019.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, members of the governing board, tonight, the comprehensive audited financial report called the CAFR and our single audit report package, the SARP, is for year ending June 30th, 2019, is presented as information. Also presented are the Uniform System of Financial Records Compliance Questionnaire, it's called the USFR, and the questionnaire findings response. So we have two things that we're going to review with you tonight that are just summaries. I have on the line Josh Jumper, who is our main auditor from Heinfeld and Meach, who comes out on site and is with us, and he is here tonight to present to you a few summary points about our audit. Now remember, this audit was actually for the fiscal year 2018 through 2019. We are actually on site this week. Josh is on with his team working on the 2019-2020 audit, but this is for a year ago. So we'd like to present a few summaries. We had a great audit. We feel that our finances are in great shape. We're going to go ahead and let Josh go over a few things with you, and then I'm going to present the findings that come out of the Uniform System of Financial Records and tell you how we're going to correct those. We use the audit process to be really constructive and help us fix things in the future. We love the internal checks that our auditors are able to provide us, and we really use this as a guide to help us get better in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Josh. He's going to share his screen and a PowerPoint, and then I'm going to come back and go quickly over the USFR compliance questionnaire. Josh, would you go ahead and like to start?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board. I will share my screen quickly. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I will be brief. I know you've had a busy evening, so I'm just here to again present the audit results for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. These are the three main reports that are issued as part of the annual audit that Mrs. Berry just explained. I will first touch on the comprehensive annual financial report, the CAFR. And this just briefly explains the audit process. We do come on site multiple times during the fiscal year. The finance department provides us source documents and lots of information. We audit that data, those documents. We compile the financial statements, the CAFR, and then issue an opinion on those financial statements. Just some highlights from the CAFR. I won't go through all these in detail, but on page 13 is the auditor's opinion, and I'm happy to present that the audit opinion was unmodified, which is a quote-unquote clean opinion. It is the opinion to strive for in your financial statements, so that is great to hear and great to see. And then there are references to other pages in the CAFR. It is a very lengthy document, but includes items such as the management discussion and analysis, which provides some high-level information. You have your government-wide financial statements, your fund financial statements, your notes to the financial statements, which dig into certain areas of the district's financials. Some other financial highlights, and there are page references to look at if you wish. Just provide some cash balances for certain funds, again, at June 30th, 2019. There is the unrestricted net position, which is on a government-wide level. So the reason that would be negative is that it includes the district's portion of the ASRS pension liability. So again, that is something that's required to be included in the CAFR. Then there is also the ending bond general debt balance, at June 30th, 2019. The next report is the single audit report. This, again, reports on the district's federal expenditures and on general internal controls. So there were over $21 million in federal grant expenditures. Each year we go through a process to determine which of those federal programs we look at and perform compliance tests on for that fiscal year I'm presenting. That was the Title I program and the Special Education Cluster, IDEA. There were no internal control deficiencies noted, which is great to see. There was one federal item noted related to suspension and debarment verification not performed for all vendors with whom the district spent at least $25,000 using federal grant monies. On page 12, there is the district's responsive corrective action. I am happy to report that that corrective action was put in place immediately, and we've already begun the fiscal 19-20 audit, and I'm happy to report that has indeed been corrected. The USFR compliance questionnaire is another required audit report that has to be issued, and this includes a variety of areas, including student attendance reporting, accounting records, cash and revenues, bank accounts, student activities, information technology. We're required to look at a host of different areas of the district and report on certain items. And I believe Mrs. Berry will get into more detail on specific items noted in that report. And then just as I'm presenting, just some other general information of the annual audit. So we did not have any disagreements with management about accounting principles. We did not encounter any difficulties performing the annual audit. There were no audit adjustments required to correct management errors. And one thing we do like to communicate in all our board presentations is the responsibility of fraud prevention rests with the board and management. Just to reiterate that key factor, I will pass it back to Mrs. Berry, and I am happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Before I go on, does the board have any questions for Josh?
I just wanted to say thank you, Joshua, for coming to our virtual meeting this evening and giving the presentation. I believe I got a copy of this report a month or so ago, and I looked through it, and it's lengthy, and so it's a lot of work. Are there any other questions from other board members? If not, Mrs. Berry.
Can everyone, Madam President, members of the board, can you see my screen? I have shared now the USFI compliance questionnaire. Can you see that screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. So one of the most important things I think that we do through the audit process is we go through all the deficiencies related to the USFR compliance questionnaire. So our state legislature puts out the Uniform System of Financial Questionnaire, and our auditors during the audit process have a lot of test work to do. That's all the internal items. It has to do with cash, expenditures, purchasing, P cards, payroll, human resource, inventory, fixed assets, and they go through and they test a number of things. And it's a long document, and they have to confirm that we've followed all the processes and procedures outlined by statute. There's always a few findings each year, and we always take that as an opportunity to continually get better, to strengthen our internal controls and work on areas that we might need to oversee or change a process or work on accountability with. And so I'm going to review a few things. We've outlined them. There was one finding in our cash revenue section of the Uniform System of Financial Records. What happened in question number 1 was the question asked, was cash deposited was the cash received deposited intact daily when significant amounts or at least weekly? So what happens is if you have to deposit all of your checks and your cash within 5 days. And so one thing when they were auditing our files, they found that 9 out of 20 miscellaneous receipts they reviewed were not done in a timely fashion. And that was specifically within our community education department related to facility use. One of our individuals just didn't know that rule, and unfortunately we hadn't trained her well on that piece. She was collecting all the checks from the facility rentals, and she was depositing them at the end of every single month. So when they reviewed that department and specifically, 9 of those areas were checks that had been written at the beginning of the month but didn't get deposited till the end of the month. So that's just an area for us to review and to work with, and we educated that team and that staff, the staff member on that. But it's always an area in our bookstores and at all of our elementaries, junior highs, and high schools. We're constantly reminding people about depositing things on time. The other area they found was that 2 out of 15 of our auxiliary receipts weren't reviewed and made in a timely fashion, again, within 5 days. And a lot of times that happens during our breaks. So during October break, if they don't deposit that over the 2-week period of time, they have not met the compliance of the law. So you have to deposit within 5 days. It is something we send out emails prior to every break to remind every secretary and bookstore clerk. And we also try to remind our departments, but sometimes we forget a specific department. So working on processes and procedures to continually remind and train people on making sure they put the deposits in every 5 days. The second one is an expenditure, and it's related actually to procurement. But on expenditures, we had the question states from the USFR were sequential numbered purchase orders prepared before goods or services were ordered for all district expenditures. And then were they approved by personnel by the governing board before issuance to vendors? So they tested they tested 45 different disbursements, and 1 did not have a purchase order prior to receiving goods. So you have to have your purchase order in place before you order goods. You can't get the invoice or the item on site prior to the purchase order. And we had 1 item within our special ed department where we had ordered something, it was received, and we got the invoice, and unfortunately we just didn't process. It was a timely need that needed to take place, and we were a couple days off of actually processing the purchase order before we received the goods. So again, it's just constant training of our staff and reinforcements that you have to have that purchase order in place prior to committing to those services. The next one was on credit cards and P cards, or procurement cards. It's like a credit card. And the question in the USFR states, were credit cards and P card statements paid timely to avoid finance charges and late fees? And we did have 2 fees that were charged throughout this year, totaling $60. What we found was that the statements were going directly to the staff members that had the credit cards, and there was a delay in getting the statement from the a staff member over to our accounts payable department, they didn't know that there was even an expense on those statements. So that helped us. Actually, we changed our process, and now we are downloading the statements electronically. The actual statement goes to the employee who has the credit card, and we make sure that we're following up so that we can make sure we pay those bills on time and we collect the invoices back from those employees who have the credit card. So again, just a timing process, making sure that we get things to our accounts payable department and making sure that our staff within accounts payable is constantly requesting from the different employees who have credit cards their statements and their invoices, so we make sure we pay them timely. So it's just a training piece on that. Procurement, there was a couple pieces related to procurement. The first question was number 4 was based upon review of 15 purchase orders costing at least $10,000 but less than $50,000. Did the district obtain and document oral price quotations from at least 3 vendors and follow the guidelines for oral price quotations described by the USFR? So one we found was we had 2 out of 15 that they tested. We didn't follow those guidelines. And what had taken place specifically on this one is we had a couple different officials that we purchased through companies for different sports: soccer, basketball, baseball, softball. Since we didn't, there's different vendors for different sports officials. And what we didn't realize with all 4 different vendors, they provide different sports officials for each for their kind of their expertise, their area, and we didn't include all of them and summarize that to go over 10,000. So we had one that was a few $1,000s each of them, and when you total everything for all 4 vendors, it goes over that 10,000. So we know we have to kind of summarize multiple awards of vendors and know that it's not just to basketball, softball, volleyball. We've got to make sure we include all of them, even though they only provide expertise to a specific area. So just a little bit of education in that piece and making sure we include all vendors that have officials in that award. Question number 5 was, if a governing board member, officer, or an employee has a substantial interest in any contract, sale, purchase, or service, did the individual submit a conflict of interest statement and refrain from voting upon or authorizing participation in any manner as an officer or employee in such contract, sale, or purchase? So this is our conflict of interest statement, and we had one issue with an employee who owns Perry Volleyball Camp LLC. There was a purchase order put through, and the purchasing department didn't realize that it wasn't to Perry High School Volleyball. They thought it was just to Perry High School Volleyball and our student activity or our high school specifically, and didn't realize that it was to the LLC. It was for a little over $3,000. They didn't realize that when they processed it, so they went ahead and processed it thinking it was just back to one of our schools. Well, it was actually owned by one of our employees. So we know now that that's owned by one of our employees, and that we need to make sure that we verify that if we have an employee who has a business and we do a purchase order with them, that we have a conflict of interest statement on file with that employee, and that we bid that employee's business out, because we're required to do an RFP or a hard bid for that employee if they own a business. With that, we know how to fix that for the future. We are able to look at all vendors and employees and compare them. We just, unfortunately, this one slipped through the cracks because we thought that it was back to our high school because it said Perry Volleyball, and they didn't see the last part of the LLC piece.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
What was that?
Sorry, this is Dave Evans. In regard to that, does that also apply for someone who may be the spouse of an employee? How does that work?
Yes. So if there is a spouse of an employee, then we have to, and they have a business. So if our employee that works for our district is an employee and their spouse has a business, and we do a purchase order to that person's business, then we are supposed to be bidding out that service if they own that. And Mr. Fletcher can comment on that since he's over purchasing, if there's anything else I need to add to that.
That doesn't seem fair.
Unfortunately, that's part of the law overall.
Mr. Evans, I'm not quite sure that it applies to spouses, but it definitely applies to district employees. Anything we buy from a district employee, that regardless of the expenditure, has to be a hard bid. We must put it out for an invitation for bid. There is no option on it. So if we were to buy $100 worth of product from Wendy Nance's company, we would have to do a formal invitation for bid. That's just the way the law is written.
So,
and I'll look into the other.
Okay, so does bidding out not mean that they're excluded?
No, it means that before we can buy their product, that we have to do a hard bid out on the street, full competition, full advertisement. That employee then gets to respond to the invitation for bid. It's evaluated based on the bid criteria, and if they win it, they get it, and if they don't, then they don't.
Okay, that seems fair.
So question number 6 is also related specifically to this vendor. Since the vendor is owned, Perry Volleyball LLC is owned by one of our employees, we're supposed to have done an official RFP or bid for their services. And since we didn't do that, we ultimately violated that piece. So it's just stating that, did the district follow all the procurement rules? Well, specifically for this vendor, we did not follow those rules because we didn't at that time know that it was an employee that had a business specifically. So again, just education on that piece. We're matching that up. We have a system in place where our procurement department matches employees who own vendors, and we also have a document where the employee has to sign off if they have a business or not, so that it helps us also identify those companies. Payroll, question number 7, did individual personnel files include appropriate supporting documentation as listed in the USFR? And this is related specifically to I-9 forms, and you probably remember this from the past. We've had a couple findings in the past related to when they look up employee files, they should be able to find the I-9 on file. And a couple years ago, or a few years back, our employees had went through the files and somehow had taken out some of the I-9s and not knowing that that's supposed to be on file according to the records of retention. So in 2019, 2020, we did an audit on all of our files, and we've been requesting employees to fill out the I-9 forms and put them back in their folders. But we still have findings because we're in the middle of that process and trying to finish that up. But the HR department has been working really hard of trying to get back to having every employee to have an I-9 a record on file, and that audit that we just conducted will really help us for the future. But again, this is from 18-19, but we're working on that and improving that area. Student attendance, we just have 4 findings in this area with 46,000 plus students and a number of registers. There's always a chance to have a few manual and clerical errors, and that's pretty much what each of these errors are. The first one in question number 17 is based upon a review of 15 students in attendance records at the elementary and junior highs, in which students were based on half days were students in attendance for less than a half day. And you can read through that scenario. What happens is we have to report them correctly. If the student leaves at 11:50, they either have to be reported as half-time or full-time for that day. There's some calculations, and if they don't put the calculation in correctly in an ADM calculator that our ADM specialist sends out, and they guess at it, or they're just in a hurry and they report it, they could be off. And that happens a lot. Sometimes they just don't have a chance to use the ADM calculator, or they just make a mistake. And so we had a few that made a mistake where they didn't report it exactly right. They reported as 3/4 of a day and it should have been a half day, or they reported as a half day and it should have been a quarter day. So that's just something we're constantly working on and reiterating with our staff. It really hasn't impacted our funding, but it's something by law we still are supposed to report accurately related to attendance. Number 9 was for schools approving and report minutes for attendance based upon the review of attendance records for 1 month period for 7 students who attended was reported in minutes. Did the district report minutes of attendance only for actual classroom instruction attended by the students? And for 3 of 7 high school students recorded, the absence was not calculated correctly. This one is hard. The ADE guidelines for attendance report in high school level is difficult. So again, our clerks are required to report a specific time. Again, what time they leave, what time they come back in. And if we don't comply specifically with that, we might be overstating or understating. And again, it's not we don't get funded based on attendance anymore, but we still are supposed to report it accurately. 11 and 12 are very similar. I'm not going to read through the specifics, but what happens again on our high school students who are full-time is question number 10, and then question 11 was testing our students that were part-time who might go to CUSD and then go to EVE at halftime. And for example, if a student comes in and gets dropped off in the middle of a class period, if they weren't there for the whole class period, we're supposed to check them as absent for the entire class period. We've taken the stance that if they come for over half of the class period, we mark them as present. If they miss more than half of the class, we mark them as absent. But the USFR says you're supposed to mark them absent if they're not there for the full class period. So that's something that we've taken. The district knows we're going to get a finding on each time, but we also want parents to know if they've been there or not for a significant portion of that class period. So again, we don't lose any funding on it. It's the way we report it and feel like we meet our parents' needs related to when they've shown up or when they've left for the day. So a student might have came in for the whole period and left the last 5 minutes. That kid we marked as there for the day, but ultimately we're probably supposed to mark him absent because he left early to go to an appointment or had to be checked out of school early. So it's just the way we report ours internally. It doesn't meet specifically that USFR requirement. And then the last one that we have on there is related, number 11, I apologize, the last two questions were 9 and 10, is 11 is related to were the withdrawal dates entered into the district's computerized attendance system within 5 working days after the actual day of withdrawal, and was documentation maintained to support that date of data entry. And we had one student out of 45 that we did not put that student in within 5 days. This student was a special needs student that had graduated midterm, and we just did not get the information from the program over to the registrar to do the paperwork to withdraw on time. We did put him in the date and the system right, which is related to funding, but ultimately we didn't get it in. You have to actually manually put it into the system within 5 days. So we just had a finding for not getting into the system on time. But again, this is a way for us to always work on our reporting with average daily membership. John Whiteneck is our ADM specialist. He works with our attendance clerks, and we just work with a number of accounting operations departments internally, and then we work with our sites on all cash handling, payroll, HR, and procurement. And again, this helps us strengthen our internal controls and best practices related to the USFR. Do you guys have any questions for me related to the compliance questionnaire?
Thank you, Mrs. Berry. I don't have any questions. Anyone else on the board? I look at this this particular audit and looking at our USFR compliance questionnaire deficiencies. It seems to be for a lot of years, it was the same things over and over and over again. This time we had a couple of little different ones, but I'm not seeing some of the issues that we seem to have had in previous years, and it looks like our internal controls have corrected a lot of those issues.
Yes, Madam President, we have had the cash finding one related to depositing on time within 5 days, because we have a lot of people depositing that. That usually is a finding almost every single year. We haven't had some of the procurement ones. Those are new, but there were specific individualized situations, and we have some good practices in place to make sure those are not happening in the future. They were just kind of individual circumstances that took place. We have, and then coming down, the attendance ones on the bottom, we have had those in the past, especially numbers 9 and 10, because of how we report, but we feel very good with our reporting system. Again, a lot of people manually putting in information and data, so you know that there is a very good variance for error, but we have a lot of great members on all teams out there working really hard to prevent a lot of things. So we're doing a great job. I feel like internally people are working really hard, and then when there's mistakes made, that they've definitely taken a look at those mistakes. They put better practices in place, and they're trying to get better all the time. So we are very happy with our audit. We'll continue to get better. Josh and his team also do an additional audit for us. They do an internal audit to help us work on processes and procedures, and we find that to be very helpful every year to just strengthen, again, our internal controls. So it's something that we do, a large school district, and we want to make sure we have best practices in place.
And we want to have our continuous improvement. So,
absolutely.
Mrs. Bruner, did you have a question?
Yes, I just had one. And first, I wanted to say thank you so much for all your work on this. I'm glad it's you and not me trying to track all this. And then also, I just wanted to know if there were any systems or procedures or any supports that would help with any of this, or do you feel like you have everything you need to address all the issues in the report?
I definitely feel like we have a lot of systems in place, but it's always great to go through this questionnaire, talk to our auditors, and then talk to our teams. We work so closely together. I'm not over every single one of these areas, but all of our assistant superintendents are over specific areas, and we work well together. We work with our teams, and then our teams work together, and they're always trying to solve issues and figure out best practices. So I feel like we have the resources to fix a lot of these things. It's just continual training. And to be honest, one thing about COVID that's helped is we've gotten really good at Teams meetings, constant training, and I think it'll help us with more trainings for the future. So I think in our world, training is always going to be a big part of making sure we stay in compliance. So it's, I think, something that we can constantly improve on, and we will. And so these internal deficiencies help us get better on our systems and our processes. I don't feel like we're really weak in any specific area. I just feel like we can always continue to educate our staff about all of these pieces and then continually get better.
Are there any more questions from the board? Well, thank you again. And Joshua, thank you if you're still on. I appreciate your report also. And I know we spoke not too long ago concerning this year, the 1920 audit. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll move on to our we can go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, the Adobe Certification Prep Curriculum, CTE Graphics at Perry High School. Dr. Nance.
Madam President, members of the board, to help prepare students to take the Adobe Certified Associates assessment that will certify them in Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign industry credentials, the Perry High School CTE Graphics program is requesting 3 test prep workbooks. The GW certification prep series will be used specifically in their Graphic Design 2 course. All the CTE graphic computer labs are currently outfitted with the required Adobe CC software in Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign. The anticipated cost for 35 copies of each workbook is $2,133.21. That includes tax, shipping, and handling, and it will be funded by Perry High School. The description of it, while it says test prep, it is actually focusing on learning skills and not the test taking. Users will complete the practice that prepares them to take the official software certification exam and demonstrate workplace readiness, step-by-step instructions, demonstrate actual software commands and features, building from basic to advanced, and content is divided into small units for better learning and usage. There will be no need to download files or purchase additional materials, as all lesson content is created using the software itself. In accordance with ARS 15721, the curriculum is going to be placed on display for 60-day public review period and comment at the Melinda Romero Instructional Resource Center starting June 11th, 2020. After the 60-day review period for public comment, the curriculum will be presented for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Nance. Do we have any questions from board members? Okay, thank you. Let me go to our next part is our roadmap. and it appears as though our next meeting is June 24th. At this particular time, I believe it will still be online or done the way we have been doing it, but that is subject to change. We will be looking at effective resource management, talking about our revised 1920 budget and then the proposed 2021 budget. Are there any other, any other additions or corrections by the board? Dr. Castile, do you have anything on this?
More than likely, we will still be talking about reopening and communicating that issue and discussing with the board.
So we will now move on to our superintendent comments. Dr. Castile.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, we reopened the district and our school offices on June 1st. We're all practicing good safeguards related to sanitizing, hand washing, distancing the best we can. As always, as you know, the district office and the schools are now on a 10-hour workday, 4-day week. So we aren't open to the public on Fridays in June, but trust me, if you drive in the parking lot, you'll see cars and people are still working. Summer school is going extremely well. More than 4,000 students have registered in our online courses with over 8,000 courses. It's easily an all-time high, and I'd like to commend Jarrett Pack for the tremendous job hiring 50 more teachers in a matter of a week to teach the courses, and we're just pleased that he's put in the time and the training and is doing a tremendous job. As you know, I put out a letter last week to the community, and I know you share and are equally horrified by the killings of unarmed Black men and women in the recent past. And these events did validate the decision by the governing board a few years ago to reaffirm our longstanding core value of equity. And no one knows more than you folks that we've been working hard, especially with our employee base, to become better informed, better equipped to meet the needs of our diverse student body, and just to have a better understanding of the issues. Dr. Salou is assembling a team, as she probably already has assembled a team, to plan on what supports do our children of color need when they return to school. And we know that need is even greater than it was as a result of the school closure. I wanted to share with you, because I know it's very difficult when we're asking you to spend 4 and 5 hours in one spot, especially in this virtual environment. We have a survey of the parents. We also did the fourth quarter hybrid model. We surveyed by parents, and I'm anxious to show that to you because one of the questions is, how concerned are you about your child's social emotional well-being during this time? There was the 2 top items were, I'm concerned a great deal, I'm concerned a lot, then a little. 60% of our family said they were concerned a great deal or a lot. 60% of those 25,000 children were represented. We know that it's even more exacerbated for our children of color based on recent happenings. So we have our work to do. At the risk of editorializing, one of the reasons I want to get our kids back as soon as possible in person, of course being safe and taking all the precautions necessary, is to get them back so we can see them face to face and make them feel more secure about the world if we can reintroduce some normalcy to them. So, and I don't mean to editorialize. The last thing I would say, and I I understand the concerns related to the Google. Again, we have a survey. Over 1,200 of our teachers took a survey about the fourth quarter experience with the Google program platform. And I want to share those results. I think it'll give you a broader understanding of how the staff feel. Why the decision to remain with Google is the fact that we've done a lot of training. For the most part, the majority of those people are very familiar with it. They want more training. And to switch gears right now, we don't know that we could achieve and get up to running as quickly as we need to. So I can't wait to respond to your questions. So please send additional questions to us so that we can respond to them and be prepared. I just thank you for your patience. We have been, and we're not unique. Every school district in the state and of the country is scrambling to know what the best thing to do is, and to take care of the children is why we're in this business, and we can't wait to get them back and to work with our families to meet their needs. So again, I thank you for your patience. There are so many issues going on right now. We're just trying to sort through them. And your patience and support is deeply appreciated by the entire faculty, staff, and administration. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. I also wanted to make sure that I also wanted to make sure that our public viewers know that they are willing, that they are able to contact us, the board members and the administration, by email, and that our email addresses are located on our website, the CUSD80.com website, under Administration Governing Board, and then you can find the Governing Board email addresses listed there for whoever you would like to contact. We would appreciate hearing from you if you have any comments concerning the opening. You also can email Mr. Narducci or Dr. Gilbert or Dr. Castile concerning that. And I wanted to make sure that the public knew that they can do that because we are interested in hearing what you have to say. Are there any other board member comments?
Madam President,
yes.
May I just tag on to your topic?
Yes.
I will tell you the 19,000 parents that responded were absolutely fabulous and very forthcoming in their comments. I am probably just over half reading the comments because there's thousands of their thoughts and input. And I would be glad to share this document with the board for your reading, but they were very articulate, very passionate, and I think it'll give you a clear understanding. So I have that for you if you'd like it.
Thank you, Dr. Castillo. Mr. Evans, did you have something?
Yep, 4 minutes. So Reverend Victor Hardy, many of you know, he is the founder of the Chandler Men of Action, and he's a former CUSD employee. Had a conversation last week with our police chief, Sean Duggan. And the chief, you just need to know, the chief and many officers in Chandler never miss us supporting the Chandler Men of Action dinner, the NAACP events, and they meet with Black community members probably monthly, if not more. And they do extensive training where they have to demonstrate sensitivity training. So Victor said in a statement, the Chandler Men of Action want to express our concern over the events leading to the death of George Floyd in the city of Minneapolis. The actions of those who protect should be concerning to everyone. However, we also wish to take this opportunity to express our support of the City of Chandler leadership and the Chandler Police Department. While the Chandler Men of Action understand the frustration of witnessing events we can't control and wanting to ensure it never happens again, we feel the relationships and dialogue previously established and that continue with our other local institutions should continue. So Councilman Sam Wong was the first person who decided to organize a peace march protesting law enforcement brutality, especially to Black individuals last month. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. and unfortunately countless other Black lives over the years. Too many to count, really. So this is why I wrote it, because I needed to stay on track. So I couldn't be there at that rally, but the message was very clear. We need to work together as a community to overcome a problem of racism and basically a perpetuation of a caste system that still exists in this country. If you remember, it's a country that was founded on the premise that all people are created equal and possess the same rights and guarantees as everyone else. These past 2 weeks have demonstrated to us that those words are really only written for some people, and those people defend that superiority bigger. In response to a customer who protested the Black Lives Matter statement on Amazon's website, Jeff Bezos wrote back, he never worries that his 20-year-old son will die at the hand of a person who took an oath to protect and serve. So yeah, Black lives do matter. Our bigger problem today is the treatment we're exposed to every single day. So just as an example, every single day when anyone who looks like me picks up a toothbrush and looks in the mirror to get ready for the day, as proud as we are of any accomplishments we've made, we see a face that someone today will stereotype, someone will judge, and someone will evaluate from a distance long before any of them get to know our character or our capabilities. That's every day. It's the same for an Asian person, a gay person, a trans person, someone who identifies with Latin heritage. And you know who it's especially relevant to? Women. This is every single day, but it just doesn't cost individuals their lives. But what about our students? Who's listening to you guys? Who's listening to you? This has to change. We need to see you first as an individual and know you for who you are, not where you come from. We promise you, we're trying to create spaces for you. We want to knock down barriers that every single one of you face, every single one of you face, every single day. We need you back. We miss you. Your teachers and coaches and instructors and mentors who know you're struggling to figure out ways to build relationships in spite of COVID-19 and all this other stuff that's going on. But we have to take the time to listen to one another rather than look past one another like we've been doing. It's the only way we're going to get beyond our past. We all need to hear your individual voices. So sorry about graduation, and sorry we haven't seen you in so long. We want to see you again and give you space and time to talk and deal with what you're dealing with. Thank you.
David, thank you very much. I'm sorry, but I'm not usually a crier, but your talking about all this was extremely moving, and thank you for expressing those words and your feelings about all this. Thank you so much. Okay. Mrs. McGee, do you have anything to say? I'm going to go through everyone one by one.
Yes, David, that was great. Thank you very much. And I also want to congratulate Dr. Craig Gilbert, who has been named one of the men of Chandler by Lifestyle Magazine. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Love.
Yes, thank you, David. And I also want to thank our CEA. They've been doing a book study on Push Out and have released a statement. I don't know if many of you have seen it, with a dedication to be anti-racist, which I think that a lot of boards need to start talking about because racism is trauma. And I'm actually going to be giving a presentation to the Black Alliance with the ASBA on racialized trauma so that we understand how racism does impact our students. It's been a very difficult few weeks, I think, particularly for our Black Indigenous POCs and our students who, identify as members of, those particular groups. I do want to, just take the time to make space and say the names of, Breonna Taylor, Deion Johnson, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd, because they're not getting enough space, I think, in, these conversations, and their lives matter, and our students are watching what is playing out, and they are becoming traumatized every day, and it is impacting their ability to create that safety within school, even within their own households, as we saw from Breonna Taylor, which was, really unfortunate, being scared of being Black and living in your home. So I do want to acknowledge that and make that space for them in this space, because our students need that as well. A number of conversations have been had during these CEA book discussions, and we do have our last one tomorrow. And I believe there is a plan for our admin to read the same book and have those discussions. But I want to take the time to reflect on the fact that, it's not just these police killings of unarmed Black men and women, or, these incidents where, Black bodies and brown bodies are being attacked, but we also have disproportionate impacts within these communities of COVID. And so safety is a factor. And I think that, we are doing a good job in terms of talking about that social emotional need of our students as they return back to the classroom. But I would challenge all of us to understand that, though we understand that our students are coming back and they're going to come back in a different place where they are traumatized, we really need to look at what the definition or what our definition of excellence is. And, I wholeheartedly believe that testing and grades at this point coming back are going to be traumatizing and create further inequities among our students who are experiencing the trauma of these events. And so I want to look at that, and I would challenge other board members. I know Dr. Salu is planning to roll this out with the CEA to read push out with the administrators. I know that Laura and I myself have attended. We haven't been in the same groups, but we've both enjoyed it. But I think our other board members maybe need to join these discussions. Our teachers are having them, our admin is having them, and it really does need to trickle up to the top so that we can make decisions that keep the safety of our students in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Love. Mrs. Bruner.
I can't say anything more than what everyone else has said, but just one thing I wanted to add is that I really look forward to having more conversations and looking at policies and what we do related to our SROs, our school resource officers. Tomorrow night, the City Council at 6 is having a session on that, and they have offered to make a specific comment about SROs and their training and what that looks like. So I look forward to that tomorrow. And I really appreciate all that CEA is doing to assist Dr. Salu with the equity efforts. And I'm learning a lot, and I really appreciate all the work everyone's been doing in these trying times. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Berner. I want to thank everyone for their comments this evening. They are important, and they help us all look at everyone else's perspective on things and help us all become better board members and better able to help this district and the students that are in it. So thank you very much. I will adjourn the meeting, and we will see you back on June 24th for our next meeting. Thank you.